state law, we can't enforce this measure. But I think it's worthwhile to explore how in the future we can talk to our state lawmakers about making it so that we as a body can help to enforce state law. So that's something that I'm going to be pursuing in the future.
Yes, anyone else want to comment? Commissioner Poblet.
On that point, is there also the potential role for legal service providers that we could support to help people go through that process as it gets created?
Certainly legal service providers as advocates for people who have rights which issue based on these changes could bring cases. I don't know, I mean, I'm not sure what the challenges would be there for them, but certainly if there was for example, an unlawful rent increase based on a unit that was covered by state law and not under Berkeley's rent ordinance, legal services providers could enforce that or could seek to enforce that, either through an injunction or whatever sort of damages. I also want to say, you know, we're not trying to talk around enforcement locally by the rent board or potential enforcement by the rent board. We just haven't studied it enough to make any kind of firm determination as to whether or not either we would be able to, based on a parallel council passed ordinance, or some other form of administration where we would be able to enforce a state law. It's not the way that rent ordinances work, as you know, because rent ordinances are their own individual set of rules that are allowed by state law. So these are state law rules that require some kind of enforcement, and our general answer tonight is that the way to enforce violations, or rather the way to respond to violations of the civil code, is to go to state court. However, this is about as parallel as you can get to our regulation. So we're figuring out, you know, whether or not it makes sense to, or whether or not we can come up with something where the rent board has some active enforcement of these new state law changes. And that would absolutely either have to happen based on a council initiative or having to go back to the voters and change the rent ordinance. We're just not sure of how to do it, or if we should do it, or if there is a way to do it yet.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also a public information component of just people knowing that it exists, which probably is a little bit simpler, but we could start to predict now and work on. Would that be the outreach committee? Because I know in the foreclosure Section 8 committee, we look at the service provider contracts. They tend, well, they're not about this because this hasn't existed before, but I could see dealing with that there. But the outreach committee would deal with that, or is staff already thinking about that piece?
I mean, we always have to be cautious that the fee is paid by registered properties for the ordinance. So if there is no enforcement or any sort of registration based on, or rather surrounding these other new units that would be covered by state law, it would be difficult to see how we would be able to incorporate them into our umbrella, particularly as it relates to our fee or expenditures related to our fee.
I see.
So, I mean, you know, all of these things are, I mean, I'm not trying to give any hard, no, we can't do this, or we absolutely can. There may be, and I want to also stress that there are cities right now around the state that are actively looking into this issue, and we're trying to consort with them and figure out exactly how we are able to make this law meaningful and to see, you know, sort of the full extent of what we can do.
Great.
Another possibility might be to, if the city has an interest in getting the word out, is to partner with the city when we're already doing outreach, including something like this, in announcements that we're sending out, also including information about this, especially if the city is able to pay for a portion of the outreach.
I just would like to comment that although It is nice to see that people are not going to get 20 and 30 and 40% rent increases every year. That over a period of time of 8% rent increases and 7% increases, after 4 years, just a base level, people are going to see a 20% increase because 5% times 4 is 20% increase on top of that. So it is a momentary stopgap measure that eventually people will be forced out of their houses and their homes because they will not be able to cover the increased rent. So although we may want to celebrate it, I also see that renters, again, are not being served, and I'm really sad about that. Because you have now people have a base, okay, they have a 2-bedroom apartment and they're paying $3,000 for it. You know, an 8% increase every 4 years is a lot of money, especially when people are not getting those type of wage increases. Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay. Now we go to item 7.3, request for the RFP.
Yes, as I just finished informing the Budget and Personnel Committee, we closed the deadline for the request for proposal has passed, and we got 2 responses, and we're just in the process of opening them and analyzing them, and we'll be evaluating them and inviting the 2 firms that submitted proposals, probably in for demos sometime toward the end of October.
Thank you. The next item is some background information on the Department of Housing and Urban Development's proposed anti-fair housing disparate act rule. We brought this up because you know, I want to say that the patron saint, or my patron saint in housing, is Byron Lunsford, who actually was the one who initiated in California, as our representative in the Assembly, the anti-discrimination rules in housing that eventually led to the federal anti-discrimination rule in housing back in I think it's 1968, but he brought it up here in California in 1963, I believe. But anyway, so now with our new administration, it's now engaged in a sustained effort to roll back basic civil right protections. And it's now, this new proposal is, would make it harder to prove housing discrimination. So let me read this little paragraph. On August 19th, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development issued a proposal that would significantly weaken a legal theory called desperate impact. Desperate impact allows people to show that a housing policy had a negative impact on them because of the race, sex, national origin, disability, or other protected characteristics, even if the policy appears on its face to apply to everyone equally. So most landlords, realtors, banks, and others involved in housing now know better than to admit that they are intended to exclude certain groups, and that's why the Disparate Act is so important. And so basically, these proposals by HUD would effectively eliminate disparate impact as a usable legal tool. And so I'm hoping that we'll come up and as a rump board, and we've done this before, thank you, Commissioner Traeger, we're going to be sending a letter to HUD to tell them, no, don't do this, because they're basically rolling back all the protections that it took decades to establish, and now we're just going back to ground zero where discrimination is going to be legal again. Any comments? Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Traeger.
Thank you so much, Chair Laverde, for bringing this up. I note that comments are due on October 18th, and luckily for us, I believe our next meeting will be on October 17th. So I would be delighted to see an item for action. And for any members of the public, according to this website that you have so helpfully shared, there are 28 days, 21 hours, and 27 minutes left to comment. So please do comment.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we're going to go to items 5. Okay, so item 5, we did send a letter that you actually, Commissioner Trega, back to HUD on the general counsel regarding the board's opposition to HUD's proposal to change the implementation of Section 214 of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1980, which, Commissioner Trega, can you refresh my memory and?
The effect of the proposal?
Yes.
So what it basically proposes to do is in a mixed household, in the sense that it would be one member or more who are citizens or hold a green card, and others who are undocumented, that HUD would be authorized to refuse the granting of a housing voucher and to actually revoke existing vouchers for the entire household, which is grossly discriminatory. And I am very glad that we were able to vote unanimously to send this letter.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so we have some other information items, and actually, Commissioner Trega, you've got the next two. Would you like to speak about number 6 on the calendar housing for diverse, equitable, and creative Berkeley? If it's the framework?
Sure. So I sent a link to you all, and this is an item that was commissioned by Mayor Arreguin and Councilmember Han, and what that was then also co-sponsored by Councilmembers Harrison and Robinson. It is called the Housing for a Diverse, Equitable, and Creative Berkeley. It's a framework for Berkeley's affordable housing. There are a couple of things I wanted to highlight. One is its author is the esteemed former deputy director of this body and the former housing director, Dr. Steve Barton.
Yes.
What I really appreciate about this framework is it devotes its entire 36 pages on talking about solutions to increase the supply of below market housing stock, as well as to protect sitting tenants in naturally occurring affordable housing, and to preserve the affordable housing that we have. There are some interesting recommendations in there, and part of those recommendations deals with how we might be able to strengthen the rent stabilization ordinance that we have, to the extent that we are able to and are not precluded by the state from doing so. Currently, there are at least two bodies that are the council requested that they provide back to council their recommendations, and that is the Housing Advisory Commission, which Vice Chair Simon Weisberg sits on, and the Measure O Committee, which I serve on. Both of those bodies have discussed it once, and we're going to be discussing it one more time next month. Vice Chair Laverde, I believe you may have requested that this also come to the 4x4?
4x4, yes. And actually, if no one's read it, I would encourage everyone to read it, especially the section under housing and Berkeley values. It is, I mean, we have time. I would love to read through paragraphs on it, because I think it was just so lovely, just so well written, and so anyways, I won't burden anyone, but I would recommend everyone get a chance to read it, especially that section, because it really talks about, Berkeley values, and if we don't have, if we only have housing for the wealthy, and we don't have housing for people who aren't wealthy, then we're losing our spirit, because being able to be, just having money is not everything. And having a rich community is not having a diverse community with a whole bunch of different opinions and of color. It just brings us and makes Berkeley much more vibrant. So it's really beautifully written. And it is a nice framework for the city council members to start looking through, to a lens to look through when now we start spending money on, the Measure O money. So this way, it would make sure that we're living up to what Berkeley can be. So thank you very much. Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Chen.
And I actually just want to echo what the chair's saying, even go further and say that I do feel like what was written by Councilmember Han and the mayor and Steve Barton is actually very visionary, and I think it actually shows a vision of what affordable housing, inclusionary housing, housing policies, what a progressive housing policy should look like. I think it is, I think Berkeley is taking a lead, and I'm very proud to see this item.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you want to say anything about the pipeline report, Commissioner Trigger?
Sure. So this is a report that started being produced by city staff at the request of Councilmember Kate Harrison in 2017. So it is produced annually, and the latest one from July of this year is what's in your packet. I just wanted to highlight, this is on page 5 of the report, and it summarizes table 5, which is the status of the regional housing needs allocation for all housing types. And it states that 56% of the reporting period, so this was published in July and the reporting period goes through the year, the city progress ranges from 65% for very low income units to 141% for above moderate units. So this just goes to show, again, a rental housing needs allocation. We're already considerably over what our needs allocation numbers are for Berkeley for market rate and above market rate. But the 65% for very low income units, which is of the various other housing types, including extremely low and very low and low, this is an improvement over 34% that was reported to council in 2017, but it's still far short of the goal of 100%. Also, of those units, there are 200 below market rate units that have been entitled, so they're counted here for the entirety of the period. So this is beyond that 6 months. Oh, I'm sorry. So there are 200 below market rate units that are not included in these numbers because even though they have been approved, they have not received a building permit yet. So there are 200 such units, and obviously until it is constructed and is ready for occupancy, it doesn't actually provide housing for anyone. So the bottom line is we've got a lot of continued work to do, my friends, and I really appreciate receiving these reports on an annual basis so that we know exactly what we can work towards.
Okay, thank you very much. So we go to item 9, the reports tip of the month. Director. Speaks for itself. Okay. And do we have any update on the outreach coming up? Oh, wait, actually, I didn't hear what you said. So we can do that in the in our reports for committees. Okay. So the next we have a couple of articles, but I know on number 11, Commissioner Commissioner Solosky has provided us some information on Community Emergency Preparation Fair for October.
Yeah, thank you. I actually have put the cities or whoever, the fair's little brochure here, outreach, publicity, and I have some on the back table for those in the audience who are interested. October 12th, Saturday, October 12th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. There will be a Community Emergency Preparedness Fair in the city of Berkeley, James Kenney Park. Again, October 12th, Saturday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Berkeley Tenants Union will have a table. Hey, Jay, are you guys going to be at this thing?
I haven't heard.
You might want to check it out. They did some outreach, and they're actively pursuing tenants and tenant organizations, because in the past, they have been lacking at these types of things. So we're making an effort, Berkeley Tenants Union and myself are making an effort to get the word out and get tenants involved. It seems to me that buildings are a good place to start organizing for disaster, and you can spread out from the building to the neighborhood. But I mean, a moderate-sized building is a great place to do some, some preparation, some organizing. Anyway, again, October 12th, Saturday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., James Kenney Park. Thank you.
Thank you. So items 13 through 21, they're all articles from newspapers. I think they all speak for themselves, unless Commissioner Traeger and Commissioner Simon Weisberg want to comment about any of the ones they've promoted.
Yeah, on my part, all but one is an article. Item 12 is a master's thesis by Eli Kaplan called Implementing a Community Preference Policy for Affordable Housing in Berkeley. And while this was an academic document, it was also submitted to the Housing Advisory Commission, I think at the first meeting in 8 years that I was not at, having stepped off that commission. But I did absorb a portion of it, and it was a really interesting discussion, and I appreciate Vice Chair Simon Weisberg for being there and your thoughtful comments. I think you were there, and you definitely had thoughtful comments. The reason I wanted to put it on this agenda is, as you all know, ground zero for displacement right now in Berkeley, and kind of the last remaining center of cultural life, in particular African American cultural life, is South Berkeley. And this policy is being thought of as a possible blueprint for the Adeline Corridor Plan, which is also in print right now, and well, it's in draft, and we have submitted our comments. So in the spirit of bringing articles that have crossover impacts to the rent board, I wanted to put that on the agenda.
Thank you. Commissioner Simon Weisberg, did you want to add anything?
Just that, they pass, you cannot discriminate against a person based on the source of their income here in Berkeley. And with great frustration, Craigslist is covered with no Section 8. And it's because we don't do enforcement. And so again, just the importance of that, whether it's as we look at, the new state protections, but also obviously a slew of ones that we have here in Berkeley.
Thank you. Commissioner Alpert.
Just wanted to, on item number, I believe it is number 13, or no, item number 14, regarding the 87-year-old Holocaust survivor in Alameda who was facing eviction because he was Section 8. His landlord has dropped the evictions proceeding because of the state law, which recently passed banning discrimination.
Alameda passed.
And Alameda law.
Alameda took the exempt. It used to be that Section 8 units were exempt from just cause.
Right.
And they removed the exemption. That's why they pulled it. It wasn't the state law. And they also
Thank you for the
did
correction.
locally the bar on discrimination against source of income.
That's great. Yes. Okay. So now it's 7:45, actually 7:46.
We had one last item, actually.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Number 22. You want to?
I don't know how the process works, but I was wondering if I could talk to you guys about that issue that you were.
We will be getting to it soon. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
Wait, was she might have been not asking about the case.
The appeal.
I'm gonna wait for them to tell me.
Yeah, so she's going to check with.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to?
Go ahead, yeah.
So as you see from the memo submitted,
This one.
we received, as of tonight's appeal, we were all caught up with appeals. And then in August, we received 6 appeals, which is the most by far since I've been advising the board. So we intend to bring 2 a month between October and December to relieve the board of the August appeals. But in the event that we are not able to, because we're going to have a little bit of a legal staffing shortage due to some paternity leave expected. And also, we don't know how many we're going to get from here going forward. So we're not sure how backed up we're going to be. But I just wanted to put it on the board's radar that if we do ask for a special meeting, it'll likely be in December or January for the sole purpose of hearing appeals that we aren't able to get to at regular meetings. So I will keep you, I'll keep you abreast every month of where we're at and whether or not we're getting further backlogged with future appeals that we're not sure, we don't know are going to be filed until they are. And each month that you don't get 2, you'll understand that there's going to be a likelihood of a special meeting being proposed by staff sometime in December or January. Thanks.
Okay, well, when we get to that bridge, we'll definitely cross it. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Alpert.
If we're now going to discuss the appeal, I will be recusing myself.
Okay.
So would that be appropriate now?
If you're just going to discuss the appeal, it's appropriate to do it before you discuss it, yes.
Yes, okay,
I'm recusing myself as well for the appeal.
okay, thank you.
I think do you have to state your reason for recusal?
No.
For this? No? Okay.
Only you do, Igor.
On the item.
Only you do. My son, Peter Solowski, works for Eviction Defense Center, who did represent the tenants in this appeal at one point. I'm not sure they still represent them, but they did at one point.
Okay. Before we go to the appeal, we're going to go up 1 second. Actually, let's do the appeal, and then we'll have one other public comment, if that's okay. Okay? So let's do this appeal. Do you have the parties here for the appeal?
This is regarding 5779.
Yes.
Good evening.
Hello. So do we have both parties here? So are you on the side of the plaintiff or the appellant?
I represent the tenant respondents.
The tenant, respondent. Okay. So I do know that we received an email. Do you
I
want
can
to?
discuss that if you like.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I had a fairly extensive conversation with Mrs. Verk, who is the property owner, and she made representations that her attorney could not make it tonight, and then she also made some veiled reference that she might not be able to make it as well. It wasn't totally clear to me. But I informed her that the hearing was going to go forth as scheduled. You'll recall that she is the appellant in the matter, so this didn't sneak up on her at all. This matter has been before the rent board for well over a year, and given that there needs to be some resolution at some point, I think it would be not wise to continue this further. She has had every opportunity to make herself available and to find other counsel if her counsel was busy, which she represented, but it wasn't entirely clear why. So, and I informed her that I was going to recommend that the board, I think I copied all of you on this, that the board, that she could come and make the motion tonight to continue and that you all would consider it, but that I would be recommending against it. So she's not here to make that motion. However, she did write the email. So what I would recommend going forward is that you decide whether or not you want to continue it or go forward.
So we can take a vote on that?
I think that would be a good idea before we discuss the merits, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Traeger.
I move that we proceed to hear the appeal tonight.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay, so motion passes. We will be listening to the respondent, thank you. In case T5779, it's 1312 Delaware Street. Can you please, so you're going to have 7 minutes, and can you please identify yourself?
Sure, thank you. Or evening, excuse me. My name is Krista Connery. I'm an attorney for the respondents, Dylan Pastor. And I'm here to advocate that the board and the commissioners uphold and affirm the decision of the...
Before you start, sorry, did you want me to go over my summary of the case? Sorry, I didn't mean
I'm
to interrupt
sorry,
you.
I didn't follow procedure. Yes, by all means. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. This is an appeal of a hearing examiner's decision that the tenants are entitled to a rent refund of $25,000 for severe violations of the warranty of habitability and substantial deterioration of the rental unit, as well as an ongoing rent reduction of 40% based on continuing violations, including water intrusion, mold, and severe ceiling and plumbing leaks. On appeal, the landlord disputes the factual basis for the hearing examiner's decision, arguing that the conditions identified as inadequate were, in fact, in good repair, and that the tenants did not allow the landlord to complete the repairs. The landlord also argues that the tenants violated the lease in various ways, but these arguments have no bearing on whether the substandard conditions existed. The rent reductions were awarded for significant water damage and mold growth associated with the severe ceiling damage caused by a plumbing leak, which was 20% of the reduction, or rather, which warranted a 20% overall rent reduction, and water intrusion in the basement. There was at times 2 to 3 feet of standing water in the basement due to a faulty sump pump during the rainy season, which led to mold growth in various parts of the rental unit, and that was another 20% reduction of the overall rental amount, or rather of the overall rent ceiling. The hearing examiner determined that the conditions had not been remedied at the time of the hearing and awarded an ongoing rent reduction of 40% until the landlord notifies the hearing examiner that the deficiencies have been cured. To date, no such notification has been received. The landlord offers no legal support for any of her claims on appeal, nor for reversal or remand of the decision. Furthermore, a review of the record establishes that the hearing examiner's reduction were supported by extensive documentary evidence, including correspondence between the landlord's agents and tenants, photographs, a detailed housing code enforcement inspection report, and compelling testimony under oath by the tenants. The tenants also commissioned the services of EMSL Analytical, Inc., which found elevated levels of certain types of mold in several areas of the rental unit. Moreover, landlord's agent, Mr. Peoples, who was the property manager, signed a letter acknowledging that the basement flooding and plumbing leak and corresponding ceiling damage were still problems. The decision is consistent with state law, the rent ordinance, and board precedent. Legal staff recommends that the decision be affirmed.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Chair, sorry. Before we begin, could I ask Ms. Connery to spell her name just for the record?
Yes, please.
Sure, my first name, Krista, is C-H-R-I-S-T-A. Last name, Connery, C-O-N-R-Y.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. You have 7 minutes.
At the risk of repeating everything Mr. Brown has just provided for the record, tenant respondents agree that the rent board hearing examiner's decision should be affirmed by this board. The substantial evidence included, as Mr. Brown provided, a housing code enforcement report citing 29 violations, including the violations for which the petition was originally filed, extensive photographic evidence that was attached to the hearing examiner's decision, numerous communications between the parties demonstrating that the tenants had complained multiple times concerning the habitability problems, that the landlord had failed to address them, a report from a certified mold testing company confirming the existence of mold and the presence of mold in the unit, written confirmation from the landlord's agent regarding the several habitability problems that the tenants complained of and for which the hearing examiner granted a reduction in rent, and live testimony under oath concerning all of these repair problems. Because the substantial evidence justifies the hearing examiner's decision granting the tenants a rent reduction, tenant respondents believe that the decision should be upheld. and particularly given no convincing or compelling argument to the contrary from a landlord appellant. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm happy to provide more information if necessary as well. Just don't want to take up your time unnecessarily.
Chair, just one minor bit of clarification. I just want to note that, that part of the rent reduction was actually statutorily mandated. So in 1269, as you know, when there are certain habitability violations associated with violations of California Civil Code Section 1941.1, they require a minimum reduction. And plumbing in good working order is one of those, and the minimum reduction is 20%. So even though this was a major plumbing issue, which caused a portion of the living room ceiling to collapse and which caused the tenants to have to put buckets underneath the upstairs bathroom every time the shower was being used, it was still only granted the minimum reduction. So just wanted to point that out for the record.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any comments, questions? Commissioner Trega?
I move to affirm the hearing examiners and staff's recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. No? Okay. So do we need a roll call on this? Is it passed?
You don't. I mean, you only actually need a roll call when there's remote participation, and just given that there was no no's, it's pretty obvious what happened.
Okay. So we move that it passes, that we affirm the hearing examiner's decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members of the board.
I'll be sending out a decision within about a week.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, so now let's move on. I'm going to let Ms. Gonzalez, Leah, Naomi come up. You want to make some comments, public statement? Public, someone let you come up.
Don't be sorry, he's fine. We're so boring. Zombies are much better, I'm sure.
They win.
Zombies too.
If you want to wait just one moment, the other commissioners will be joining us.
May the record reflect it was Zombies too.
Yes, and it's very important.
Hold on one second.
They're on their way.
They're coming in. Let's let the other two commissioners come in. I forgot that they were gone.
I let them know.
It's on the airplane.
Recusers are back. Yay. Yes.
Unrecused.
Okay, so now we have our commissioners back. So thank you very much. So it's Ms. Leah Naomi Gonzalez who's going to be speaking.
Yeah, hi,
Hello.
how are you? And forgive my eyes, I'm actually looking at you, I think, but I don't know. They tend to go everywhere. So, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Nice to meet all of you. Good to see you.
And speaking to the microphone too.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was always bad on stage. So this is about the BMC 1331.010 and 020, and then all of its little other numbers that go with it for the enforcement. And that article that you guys mentioned in the Berkeley side, which I have to say, I had to tell her in the comments to, I don't know how that article even got written. If I was a reporter, I would be ashamed of myself. The mayor said that they created this great discrimination code a couple of years ago and how they'd had no complaints. And the fact that they did that article at that point, it was what, a month and a half, 2 months after I filed a complaint. And I kept filing a complaint. And it's a very serious complaint. And it was done extensively. This person that discriminated against me not only discriminated once, she doesn't even own the property. She's just a landlord, property manager for the owner's representative, she just does the paperwork. And I was told yes, twice, by the owner's representative. It's like the brother or something. And he turned the volume up. Paul, honey, turn that down. I can't think. So long story short is, this woman, Anna Corona, she is a below market rate landlord. It's a property on Shattuck. That's the only reason I can think of why the city manager's office would ignore me. I mean, blatantly ignore me. This is with, yeah, please, thank you. Feel free. Thank you. Why did he do that? He's so cute. He kept telling me to come up here and talk to you guys too, so. So the city manager's office refuses to take the complaint. The enforcement process with it says specifically that it's supposed to be, it's not the deputy city manager, it's the assistant city manager is how it's worded. And this is also for 13.24, which is the other discrimination law, the one on family status or whatnot. The way I read it when I researched it was, I remember when it happened. I remember when that law came out. And it was one of the biggest things I'd ever seen. Being a homeless family, I said, my God, this mayor, I think he was the mayor at that point, is going to do something for families, finally. And nothing ever came of it, and I forgot. And then I remembered it. And when I found it and researched it, I realized that 13.24 had been created in July. It had been a requirement by the federal government to match the state and federal laws for discrimination, but they wanted it to be a little bit more extensive. They didn't want the city laws or ordinances to be as vague. So they put 13.24 out, and it wasn't strong enough. And this I know because it says in September of 2017, when 13.31 was created, that the reason they had to create it was because they needed to rewrite what they put into 13.24. They needed to separate it and put it in its own entity.
I'll give you another minute.
And then make it, thank you. And that beep is nerve-wracking. And then make it stronger. It needed to be worded stronger. They needed to have more enforcement actions, something more specific to the city. And he would like to throw his airplane. This isn't game time, though. So the enforcement action says the assistant city manager. It says that the process is supposed to go through the city attorney's office. It says that it's supposed to have criminal enforcements. It's supposed to be done quickly. The remedies are not just to be civil is to be inclusive. And it's supposed to mean that the property owner, whoever's doing the discrimination, has to give of equal value or the exact place, as well as financial, or suffer misdemeanor and financial repercussions for it. I don't know why I was ignored. I do and I don't. I do know that this child and I are in a tent right here at Strawberry Creek Park. And this discrimination is just a little bit of what I've been facing. But a lot of it has to do with the city manager's office. And
Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
oh, I thank you. Thank you. I forgot all about that process. What are you playing with? Somebody left their glass case here. So what do I do about this? I don't know. I just wanted you guys to know that that article was written right at the time that I was being put back out on the streets because Berkeley Mental Health, who I have my housing voucher through, was having me thrown out of another hotel. I've been banned from every hotel now here in Berkeley, except for one. And this is the Downtown Berkeley Inn. She's the only person who will let me stay there. Ironically, she will not take money from Berkeley. She refuses. I guess this woman and her family 20 years ago housed 22 homeless people for Berkeley Mental Health, and Berkeley Mental Health left them there and did not spend $1 on them and did not house them. And this woman and her family at this hotel housed those 22 people and took care of them out of their own pockets. So this woman and her family at downtown Berkeley and refused to take money from Berkeley for housing people. It's the only place left I can go, and I'm broke, and his birthday's on Monday. And Berkeley won't pay for any other hotels because they don't have to. Every single hotel that discriminated against me and said I was banned admitted to their corporate offices that Berkeley Mental Health told them to ban me. Honey, you can't do this. Thank you. They told the hotels to ban me for whatever reasons. Some of them got permits passed to do construction. Whatever other reasons they gave them, the hotels admitted it to their corporate offices. Berkeley Mental Health says, ban this mother and child so that we don't have to spend money on them. And that way she'll lose her housing voucher, and then her and her child will be on the streets, and then she'll lose her child. I'm pretty sure that Anna Corona at K&S Property that's why she discriminated.
Well, thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Unfortunately, the rent board does not have jurisdiction over Section 8.
And that's the other thing, and this is the lovely thing. I even have this letter here from HUD saying the same thing, that they don't have jurisdiction over Section 8 discrimination. It's great, I don't have Section 8. It doesn't matter what source of income or voucher you have. I have Shelter Plus Care, but the law says it can be any source of income or any voucher.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the main thing is the BMR landlord, whether or not there's some influences on her having that status, she's got to understand the laws. The other thing is the city attorney's office and the city manager's office have told me to go to you guys for this discrimination complaint. Everybody tells me to go to you guys.
Can I ask a question? You filed a complaint about discrimination to whom?
The city manager.
The city manager, and then,
Deputy city managers, both of them, Paul Budenhagen, David White, and to D. Williams Ridley.
and then your experience was no response at all?
None.
And that was
Which time?
in July, it
No,
sounded like?
July was the last time I attempted to. The discrimination, I got the voucher March 31st. I saw the apartment April 12th. That was the discrimination. I filed the complaint like middle of May.
Commissioner Trigub?
First of all, thank you for coming to us, and that sounds like an awful situation. I'm sorry to hear. I wanted to see if you'd be willing to talk with our staff after this meeting. I think we're close to adjourning, but because I am not familiar with this particular case, and I think most of us are not, it would be helpful for a staff-to-staff conversation. If there's a letter that said, come here, then that is something that
I have the
could be
emails
addressed.
from, I have emails from your guys' Brent Stabilization Board office saying nobody will help me on this one. But no, this is people, or I think I might have one email from maybe the city manager's office. But no, nobody says it to me via email or paper. I never get anything that legitimate. I just get told this. I do know also on your website, on the front page, it has the link to discrimination laws. And since Berkeley misorganized these in their BMC codes, you guys also have it wrong. You guys don't even know that it was a criminal offense. And I think that should be a huge difference. I can't imagine how things would be different right now if 2 years ago, you guys had known the truth about these laws. These people should not be discriminating. I look on Krista Goldbranson, is that how you say her name? I look on her website and I look at the newsletters and I see statements that of property owners saying things like, we're going to deny housing, we're going to act like we're not having housing available, like our properties are not for rent, we're going to price them too high. We're going to continue to do this until they get rid of rent control. So there's a mass agreement to make this stuff happen.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to get him to bed. What do you want to say? And these are the nice guys.
Okay, so moving
night.
along.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming.
So now we go to Section 8, Committee Board Meeting Updates and Announcements.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
He's going to be on TV.
Okay, so Budget and Personnel?
We just had a meeting prior to this meeting, and the director has already provided updates on the two items that we discussed, which was a follow-up or status update on the RTS contract and bidding process, and information on staffing changes. We will work internally to schedule our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Update for Habitable and Sustainable Housing Hash Committee?
Thank you. We are actually still waiting on a few reports, and right after we get those, we will meet to assess our next steps.
Okay, thank you. Our next meeting is the IRA AGA and Registration Committee.
Yeah, staff is going to report.
Yeah, so it's important for that committee to meet in October because the board has to adopt the AGA in October. The ordinance requires that we publish the AGA on or about October 31st. So traditionally, it's been the first Thursday of the month. So can the members make October 3rd at 4 p.m.?
I can't. I'm out of the country, actually.
Okay.
I could do Friday. I fly back Thursday. Actually, yeah, I fly back Thursday. I don't
So
I
October
don't think I'd
4th?
make it 4 o'clock.
October 4th?
Yeah, we just need a quorum.
How about Poblet?
I could do that, but it would have to be in the morning. Is that an option?
on Friday.
On Friday, the 4th?
Yeah, I can do that.
What time in the morning? I mean,
I'm flexible.
could we do it 9 o'clock?
Could you do 8:30? It's literally a 5-minute meeting. Unless we're, I guess we
It
want to have.
depends on what you want on the agenda. I was just saying that it would be good to meet
Yeah.
next
bring you
month
coffee.
because we have to bring something to the board meeting on the 18th or whenever the October meeting is. 17th, thank you.
Yeah, so then I think we do need to have a real meeting. You have,
I mean, if it's just to recommend adoption of the AGA, it would take about 5 minutes. I've already figured it out. I've already written the reports. It's already done. It just depends on when you want to have it. I mean, but if you want to have other items on it, then obviously it'll take a little bit longer.
I guess my thought was, is it possible to do the following Thursday, which is the 10th? Do people have, does that work okay for the staff?
It's fine by me.
You might be in North Carolina?
Are you going to that too?
Probably going to
Probably.
So,
We
Okay.
would still have quorum,
You can do that.
either Friday or Thursday, the 10th.
I'm available the 10th, and I'm available the Friday, the 11th as well, so.
I'm not available on the 11th.
Okay, so the 10th?
If we're not going to get Solly anyway,
What's your notice? I'm not available on the 11th.
What's that?
well,
I haven't put in for
sure,
it.
yeah, 10th is
Let's
good.
do Thursday, the 10th.
Okay.
And in the afternoon or in the morning?
What's better,
What's better for you?
I just need I need either
I
the
can't-
beginning or the end.
Yeah, the end.
Okay.
Yeah, what time?
Can people do 4:30?
Yes.
4:30?
4:30 is good.
Is that okay for staff?
Yeah, that's totally fine. So the 10th, Thursday, 10/10 at 4:30 p.m.
Yes, please.
Okay, and I will call you as committee chair, Commissioner Simon Weisberg, to put together an agenda. Okay.
Can we do anything? I've already done my duty as a representative.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll talk to you, Chair Laverde, after the meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now is next the outreach meeting.
Thank you. So outreach, like all meetings, we had a great staff report on the workshops, the events. So I want to thank staff for being very visible. We actually did talk about the tenant and landlord survey, but it seems like a written format will not be available until either November or December, which is totally understandable and totally okay. I would personally like to see us do it on the 5th of every year, so maybe 2025, 2035, because it would be a good in-between after the census, but we will go on as seen. There will be a proposed item that was passed by the committee regarding the census, and we hope to introduce that at the next meeting, and we look forward to meeting soon, probably in November.
Okay, thank you very much. So next up is the 4x4 Joint Committee on Housing with the City Council and the Rent Board. So we were going to meet this month, but half of the 4 members from the City Council will be in South Korea. So we're going to be meeting in October, on October 1st. to look at some issues. Following up now on the ad hoc committee on technology issues, is there an update on that?
There is no update. I know that we'd like to meet, however, take your time because we know that, it's not you.
I actually do have an update.
Yes.
Commissioner Solosky is testing out a piece of hardware.
Yeah, I'm testing out a Chromebook tonight.
Oh, and how is it?
It's fine. It works, even for me.
Oh, great.
So I'll provide information on that at our next meeting.
And that was one of the recommendations, that we have computers on deck for meetings, and we don't actually give them out, but we'll talk about that at the meeting, yes. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any other announcements they would like to provide?
We could do a quick report on eviction section 8.
Oh, did I skip that? I'm so sorry.
That's okay, I don't think it made the agenda.
It is actually B, I thought.
Oh, yeah, it is, it's the first one.
So
Great. We met on September 3rd. We reviewed a report of foreclosures. There wasn't a significant change. We're trying to reorient the conversation we were preparing to have with Berkeley Housing Authority, given the death of the executive director and the urgency of discussions around public housing. And we're meeting again in November.
Great, great. Thank you very much. Would anyone want to adjourn the meeting? Okay, then, no one? I'll move that we adjourn the meeting.
Yeah, I'd actually like to see if we can adjourn the meeting in memory of, is it Mr. Wilkins? The BHA executive director.
Yes, okay, so,
Can we also, just in the spirit of the climate strike on Friday?
Yes.
Adjourn in honor of our former climate?
so yes.
How about in solidarity with all the youth and allies that will be marching tomorrow for the climate strike?
Even more articulate.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.